I wanted to talk through the process and show an example of how I use SketchUp and AutoCAD to create details. These are going to be details that will be what I would call dynamically linked between SketchUp and AutoCAD. It's a forced dynamic. You have to actually upload and refresh, but it is a very quick and great method to do detailing, not just the SketchUp portion, but the drafting portion inside of AutoCAD. So let's dive into a particular detail. So what I like to do is what I call my post-it notes. And that's what these orange tags are right now. And you could do this as a full building section, or as really what these are intended to be. I'll call them wall sections. You can get into smaller details, but really these are not necessary. I just want to show them as we used to do it this way, but I'm going to show you what I like to do and how I like to draft these. I like taking these wall sections and I use these for details, whereas I do create building sections using the SketchUp building section tool and export out those. But this is specifically going to be talking about details, and I can show you what the building sections would look like as well. So diving into this, the way this model is set up, I have my architectural model, and that's what this is. This is the current house we're working on. And then I have my consultant model. So if I hide my structure and hide these, we're currently building the structural portion. We're overlaying everything into it to verify and check out what my structure is actually happening. So I still have a little bit to go on that. It's not necessary for this process, but the great thing is I can, once I get my proper structural model built in, I can actually allow that to be part of the detailing. So it's kind of fun. And it also shows if structure is off. For example, we recently raised the parapet up, so this area right here was our parapet and structure had it correct, but architecturally we raised it and structure does not currently have it correct, because you can see here my structure is off by this foot or two, whatever it is we raised it. And if I were to go into my detail, which my detail H, this wall section would show that, you see this is my architecture. I removed the structure when I created this, but I can quickly show you how it would really work. So the way I use these are components, and I have it labeled, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, all that sort of stuff. If I double click into here, you can see this is all just loose geometry. And the way I kind of do quick refreshes, and you'll see it happen here. So this is just the architectural component of the detail. There's no structural information. And even though the structure is going to be wrong, I'll show you how that goes in and you can see it. The way I refresh these is I just simply do Control A, and then I use extension cleanup 3, and I have that set as my tilde key to as my shortcut. So I just do Control A, hit tilde, and it cleans everything up. And then I have Control Q set to be intersect faces with model, and you can see Control Q right there. So I just hit Control Q, and this now intersects with the model, and it essentially immediately draws my detail. And this is where I was saying you can see it actually added in the structural information that is currently wrong, but I just kind of want to show how that works. So I'm just going to undo and go back to my cleaner version for right now. And you can see I can go through and do this wherever I want. And, as an example, we have these here because we were talking about doing details for this, but in reality, what I would prefer to do, I want to see what my next detail is. What do I have? HI, so I guess J would be my next detail. So I'm going to show you the way I would really do this. I'm just going to take this guy, we'll rotate it, and I'm going to make unique. And then under here, normally this one's not called, but I normally like to update this and call it detail J. I'll have to go back and clean the other ones up. And then we will come in here and we will edit this. This is 3D text, but it's not the built-in SketchUp 3D text. It is the editable 3D text plugin, so it's really nice. I'll make this unique and then right-click again and say edit text. And here I can edit this and make it J. And I have 0 extrude and a height of 1'4". None of that really matters. It's just so I can note where the detail is and what the detail is. So we'll close that. And then I'm going to move this over here. And we'll just intersect, kind of wherever we want the detail. Maybe we'll go through somewhere like that. And I'm actually going to move this down because I want to make sure it dives into the driveway so we have some references. So now I can jump into here and Control A tilde and erase everything, and then Control Q, and now I have a detail. But you see I'm actually a little bit off. I didn't check to make sure I was getting the whole thing, so maybe we'll just slide that over, and now I know I'm getting everywhere. So do Control A tilde, Control Q, and I now have my detail. I'm not sure what those are. We'll clean that up. And this, you can see now I have a reference to where my driveway is, all that sort of stuff, and perfect, exactly what I was looking for right now. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come over to this display of all my details, and I'm going to rotate, and we will just plop this on here. You can organize this better or however you want, but really it's just putting them in here. It's all that really matters. And then I have a scene set up called wall sections, and this gives me a replicated exportable view of all these details. So I have, you can go to File, Export 2D Graphic, but you see I have Alt-Z set up for that. So Alt-Z opens up my export dialog. I have these wall sections that I'm exporting out. And so just like that, I just created this brand new wall section here that will bring into AutoCAD. And so this is really what I want to talk about. This is a whole different way of thinking about developing details in draft mode. Indifferent of any program out there, it's more about the methodology than the drawing. So that'll be the fun part. So let me dive into here. So let me close this. So you can see this is that export, and we don't have my detail J here yet. So under my XREF, this is the file right here. I'm just simply going to click reload, and you'll see this will instantly pop up over here. And now I have that detail in here. So that's where I'm saying it's dynamically linked, but it's not live dynamic. It's a forced dynamic. But if you save the file and actually close it, next time we reopen it, I believe it actually re-imports all the XREFs anyway, so it would have reloaded on next one regardless. So now the real fun, the real trick, what I like to do is, you can see I have this box that outlines everything, this dashed line. It's on def points. I create what I call a shell. So this is the raw import that we just talked about. I don't ever want to edit this because this file will consistently and constantly be updated from SketchUp. So this doesn't want to be touched. If I edit this and then re-export, I just lost all those edits. So inside of AutoCAD, I'm going to create a component, or excuse me, a block that houses this. And I'll show you what I mean right here. So you can see this is a block. And again, if I double click on it, you can see that this is named detail shell all. So it's just the shell of all details. That's all. So if I block edit this, and you can now see this is that outline I was talking about. And I just use that as a placeholder for everything else. And now this is that same imported XREF. And you can see it's still here, untouched. I'm not doing anything with it. All I'm going to do now is draft on top of it. So you can see here's all of my drafting lines. And even inside of here, for example, my tie beams. This is a pretty generic beam. Just structure's going to do all their own details, but I need to show it structurally. I want to show concrete. So I have this set up as a dynamic block that I can adjust and move and really create whatever size beam. And you can see that is how I create, you know, this beam here, my concrete slab for the porch, this beam, and et cetera, and even these are hangers with my rolled metal to attach my ceiling to. So even this, if I copy this over, this is a dynamic block. I have it set up to be, I believe, 2 feet on center. So you see I can pull this and adjust it to however many I need, 2 feet on center. And then I can also adjust this up or down to whatever level I need. And it has all the information in there. It makes it super simple to draft. Similarly, this is my plywood. You can see it's a very simple, just rectangular piece with a fill, but I can push and pull and stretch to whatever size I need. And this is just the same thing here. But this one has more for my stucco finish. So it's a super quick way of drafting all the details. Similarly, this would be like tile flooring. So I have this one set up that I can array the tile as far as I need it to go, and then, you know, trimming it and all that sort of stuff. Now you'll also see, again, all these purple lines, these are all on def points. And so what I do is I box out where I want to trim the detail. So this red is my full detail that came in from SketchUp, and I just created this box, and this is going to be my detail, essentially my wall section detail. And you can see these I haven't touched yet, and so we can do another one real quick to show you exactly what I mean. But then these are details within the details, and you'll see kind of the really cool way of what we're trying to do here and how we use this in just a second. So I then come back in and I highlight where I want to do blow up details all along. So for example, if I want to do this detail for my wall section B, I'm just going to do an outline. I'm going to offset this 1 inch, and only doing that just so I'm making sure I'm not getting this outline in. And then from there, I can stretch this down, and I don't want the B in there. That's just more for my own reference that I know it's detail B. So I can relate it back to SketchUp. So it's just a good placeholder for me. So now I'm going to essentially trim the detail right here. And, you know, we can pull this up a little bit more. Just go right there. It's fine for right now. We can always adjust this later if we need to. And maybe just to have it, so now I'm going to match properties from here to here. And then maybe we're going to want to blow up this detail. So I'm just going to outline where I think I'm going to want the detail blow up to be. And maybe we'll do something like that. And there would probably be a couple of others as well, you know, to really show what's happening in the beam or what have you. But again, this is just an example to show what's going to happen here. And then I could spend the time, and we'll just do this quickly just to kind of show as an example. Just want to make sure that the beam is fitting there. That's good. And I'm actually going to place this there. This is going to be an Epicor slab. So I'm just going to show this as just basic concrete right now. We can come back in and add more and more details, but I also don't want to get too specific since structure is going to be doing theirs, and I don't want to do double work. And so that's good, and that'll take care of that. We go back in and check what that is, and this is really, this actually could be an interesting other thing to show. So detail B. So let's go back to SketchUp. Where did my SketchUp? This one here. So we're going to find detail B. I just want to make sure I'm understanding where this is. And so this is where having all of the details labeled. Okay, so this is detail B over here. And what are we looking at? We are going to be looking at... okay, so this is a garage door. Okay, that makes more sense now. So we're going through the garage door. See, I got to adjust my structure footing there. That's floating. And yeah, we have our drywall, then our garage door. I'm not showing the mechanical system. We'll get into that later. Okay, so now I know what we are drafting. But actually, just for the fun of it, I want to show something else. So you can see my footer is essentially in the wrong place. This needs to drop a little bit further down. So I'm going to grab this footer and I am going to slide this down to match here for now. And it's fine. Again, this footer go even further down. We can get into really refining this as much as we want at any point. But the key that I wanted to show is, you see I have these lines here. This was the slab where really this is supposed to be the slab. But now that we've adjusted it all, I need to clean up the detail. So what do? We come back in here, Control A, tilde, Control Q, and now you can see everything updated. So we'll save, go back to our wall section, Alt Z, I re-export this out. And I hope it doesn't crash. It does crash every now and then. So it did crash, but luckily that's why we save. But let's just go check on our detail. What was this one here? Yep, so it's all correctly saved. Go back to wall sections, export out, try it again. And there we go. Usually happens pretty quick. So now we have that. We can go back into our AutoCAD. We come out of the block real quick, and we can just simply go back to our XREF, reload, move this off the screen, and you can see this all properly updated again. And so you can see now that the a little bit more clear, I'm probably going to want a little bit more of that foundation. You know, so I can always just kind of slide this down, and you'll see why this is important. And ultimately, I actually might make the detail slightly bigger as well. But while we're in here, so the fun part is, you know, that could be that beam, and I don't have the structural information yet. So we're just going to kind of make a guess and draw this in. I'm going to do just a 12-inch beam. So I just did a reference to a 12-inch line, so I can push pull that. And then, you know, maybe they're going to end up doing some block on top of that beam. I can drop these in here, and then this is all dynamic, and I can slide these up. So now I have that block wall, and I'm going to pull some other information in, even though where am I looking for? Oh, here we go. So I'm just looking off screen where I have a pile of previously built components. So again, this is my interior furring wall dynamic block. So this just has my 1x with insulation and then my drywall. So I can plop this guy right here. And then I have a dynamic version where this is just my GWB. This is GWB with 1x furring, and then GWD with 2x. And that's the one I want to use. So you see I have multiple versions of this insulation. I can plop it right there, and then I can pull this up. And there's my insulation. I can just copy, you know, this over. We'll throw, maybe this will be a drop ceiling, maybe it'll be a frame down ceiling. I'm not quite sure yet, but we're just gonna kind of play with this. And actually, maybe if this is, maybe we'll do something like that. They'll just frame that all the way up, and then plop that there, and maybe we'll slide this over, say like 8 inches, and they would start that there. And then you see I can move this down, and then grab these guys and snap to there, come and snap to there, and then snap to there. And I don't need all these extras, so come on, and we'll just pull that back, and there's that detail. So we can get into, so that's good enough for right now for all intents and purposes of what we're trying to do. You know, and again, you would go back in and draft over all of the details on top of all of this. And again, this is inside of what I call the shell container. So we'll close the block. And so now this is one giant block, which is great, but it's not what I ultimately need. So I'm going to make a copy of this, pull it to the side now. And in fact, I'm going to make 2 copies. And I'm making 2 copies because I'm doing currently 2 different details, this one and this one. So now I'm simply going to X-clip this block, and I'm going to do it by this this def points outline. That's why we draw it in there. Makes it really nice. So we'll do a new boundary, we'll do rectangular, and we'll just match that outline. And now there is my detail. There's my wall section, all nice and clean. And I'm going to do this one as well. So we'll X-clip by this rectangle, and now I have that detail. And the beauty is, if this ever updates, this updates, and all of these updates, and these are all the same thing. These are that same thing that we just went through. Now, this is all drawn at 1:1, and inside of my AutoCAD, my 1:1, you know, essentially gets scaled by the paper. You see I have my title block here. So my title block is set up so if I print this title block, this will print at 1/4 inch. So knowing that, the other beauty in the way I'm grouping this is, you see my wall section, I want to be at 1/2 inch. So I'm going to create another sheet here. So I'm just going to copy this down. And we'll call this 8.1. And I'm going to copy just my wall section block down, and we'll call this section B. and I keep the same B as what is listed here. So again, I'm always referencing back to the same thing. So now I can move this over to here. And since this is just simply a block, it's simply a container, I can scale this container by 2, which means this will now print at a 1/2 inch when I print this sheet at 1/4 inch. I know it's a little confusing to work that way, but I just find it so much easier personally. And I'm just going to move this over. And anything you see here in purple is all on def points. None of this purple stuff prints, but this gives me a way to align things. So for example, I have my elevation tag. So I'm going to, let's start with this. And I'm going to copy this down to here, because that's going to be my second floor. So this is my garage slab, which is much lower than the house, and so that's fine. So that's why I want to make sure I have my reference slab. So I'll just keep my reference slab there. And so I'm going to copy this down again. We'll put this here, and we'll call this garage slab. Oops, and I'm going to call this one reference slab, which my reference slab I just use as my finished floor of my house. Finished floor of the slab, I guess you can call it. I don't know why we'll get to that later. That's fine. Now, the kind of the cool thing is, let's grab my second floor, and I'm just going to copy this down. And instead of putting it right there, I'm going to show the other kind of cool thing that the way these are set up is I can actually stretch. So I'm going to push that there. So again, this is all dynamic stuff, which is great. So now this is actually just simply a dimension, and it's connected to my elevation. You can see the dot right there, which means now if I stretch by this point and go up perpendicular to here, you see my dimension changes and gives me my 1410 for my second floor. So it's just fantastic way of drafting, makes things so much easier. And we could even do the reverse. I'm going to copy this guy down here, and I'm just simply going to move where the dimension is being pulled from. And then instead of this case, instead of saying above slab, I think I just got to go to my properties, and we are just going to say below slab. And so now, if this slab ever changes, I can just slide this up, and you can see that dimension adjusts. So it's just so great. I have one already set for top of beam. So again, I'm going to copy this based upon my 0, 0. I don't care where it ends up, which it ended up in the right place, so that's good. But even if it ended up, say here, it didn't really matter, because all I do is just grab, stretch, move it up, and we're there. So I could go through and add in all the beam tags I need to, all that sort of stuff. And again, I have this reference line, which is on def points, that doesn't print, but this allows me to copy text, and I can snap anywhere along this line and keep my text aligned. I can just point this to wherever. We can call this, concrete beam C structural drawings. I have all of these notes on another project or in another file that I can usually copy and paste. I, at this point, write very little unless it's a unique case, and then I paste that somewhere else. But You see, now I can place these wherever and keep nice clean things. Now we can get into this beam detail. So I'm going to copy this guy down. So I think it'll be nice and close. And this one I'm doing at 1 inch. And I can keep, maybe I'll make this one detail 1, because ultimately this will be 1A 8.1 and this will be detail 1A 8.0. So it's fine to do that. And so now I can copy, did I lose it? Oh, it's right here. Yeah, so this is my, again, what would be considered 1/4 inch. So I can scale this up by 4. And I can move this and place it here. And again, you can see this outline box doesn't match or doesn't fit, but this is all dynamic stuff. So I grab this, slide it down, and I can even snap to there if I want, or go further down just so it's all encapsulated. And there's my beam detail. Maybe I'll slide it all the way over. This might need to get a little bit wider to give me room for text and all that sort of stuff. Maybe I would actually put it on this side, and we can copy this reference line, and this actually could be a good place to keep it right there. And then this way we can add in our text there, and you can see could shorten the text, or we could even just make this box a little bit bigger. So maybe let's make the box bigger by 2 feet that way, and then I'll move it over, and this will go over, and this will go over. So now we got plenty of room to put in text, all that sort of stuff. And we can really detail this out and talk about like how all this would happen, whatever needs to go in there. And even my dimensions, the way my dimensions would work. I have these preset dimensions. So if I just do any dimension, this is a 1-to-1. This is literally 15 feet to within my drawing. So you can see, for use with 1/4 inch, if I were to match this to this, it'll stay 15 because everything is kind of set up for 1/4 inch. If I go to 1/8 inch and I match, you see my dimension adjusts from 15.2 to 30.4. Or if I go to 1/2 inch, the reverse, you see everything gets cut down. So I can simply match the dimensions I need. And to show that, if I dimension from here to here, this actually dimensions at 2 feet 8. So that's not correct, but I have my dimension string kind of preset, and I needed 1 inch. So if I match this dimension to here, you see it now dimensions 8 inches. So that's how I work through dimensions. I just have to make sure I use the right one for the right scale, all that sort of stuff. But this is how I create and draft my details. And the nice thing is, inside of here, I can just outline all of my details, copy and paste all the pieces, really just fill in the gaps, spend a couple hours just filling in all the gaps. Then once I have that, I can come in and create all the different sized details that I need to and want to. As you can see, this is a wall section at 1/2 inch. And so I blew up this balcony and created this detail, which is 1 inch. This is the same detail. If I were to update this detail, this updates. And that's the beauty of all of this. I can really get into much more specific details of things, obviously at the bigger scales, which is great. And I have these cut lines. So for example, I can just place this over here, and since it's not that big, I can do that, and now this will give me my cut line for what's occurring there. To show that over here, I can just drop this guy down, and so it'll show that this is now cut. And if I needed something bigger, so since this is now, it's the same thing but scaled up, this is now 2 times bigger. I actually have this as a dynamic so that I can stretch, and it creates a bigger version of that cut line. And I can place those cut lines around anywhere I need. I can plop this guy down right here, and it shows that the window's cutting. All that sort of stuff. It just makes me drafting all this stuff just so fast and so quick. Yeah. So I would just go through and then just start creating all of my detail sheets once I have all these filled out. And if this thing ever gets bigger, you can see in SketchUp, I can, once you have the scene set, honestly, I probably should have set this, maybe something more like this and give myself plenty of room to grow. Because once it's set, you really don't want to change it. So we're fine. Even this one here, how it's kind of getting cut off, maybe I could even just place it over here and I have plenty of room to grow, or I could place it over here. It doesn't really matter as long as it's on the screen. So maybe I'll even place this one here. I'm just going to save the file. We'll re-export this out. Actually, I just want to make sure, because I think I did not start drafting anything on here yet. If I started drafting and I started making the details, you don't want to move details around because it's kind of all becomes locked into each other. Not that it would be difficult to move things and adjust. It's just working through, best practices of what to do and what not to do. So now that I move the detail over and I have a little bit more room, again, off screen, I'm just going to reload. And you see that this just now reloaded. So I'll just come back into here. And I'm just going to widen up this outline. And this is just more of a visual reference as to what is being referenced and all that. Also, the other good thing about having this line in here is I can reference edit. So I can either block edit and I'm inside of this block, nothing else, or I can reference edit. And if I click on this line, I can reference edit and I can see everything else, even though I'm just referencing inside of here. And the reason why this line is important, because if I reference edit and click on this, you see this kind of jumps because it's actually referencing the XREF, and I don't want that. So I want to make sure I'm not referencing the actual XREF, so that's why I have this line in here, so I can easily jump into this block, and this is still an untouched reference. So that's my detailing. I have another video which will show how I block out a floor plan and how I draft in floor plan and the tools I use there. But this is kind of what I would consider an advanced feature, if you will, or an advanced way of thinking about using SketchUp into AutoCAD. Ideally, would love to find a way to make this work into layout, and I'm sure there's even things you can do now, but it's really thinking through not just drafting something, but it's also changing something, and ease of change and just the ease of the process from beginning to end is ultimately what I'm working at. So more than happy to have demonstrations further of this if anybody has any questions. Thanks.